All right, number 15. So here we're asked to graph derivatives, okay? So it says the graph below is f of x, graph f prime of x and f double prime of x, all right? So don't worry, we won't worry about the bonus. I'll kind of mention it here in a minute, but all right. So we have this graph, right? And so this is the original function. So I'm just going to label this f prime, right? The original function. All right. So remember, to graph the derivative, we'll do this one in, let's do red. Okay. So to graph the first derivative, we're going to plot all the zeros, right? So remember, the zeros are all the peaks and the valleys, and any place where the function's horizontal. So so here's a valley, here's a peak, and here's a point where the function gets horizontal, right? So what I'm going to do is at those points, I'm going to put zeros on the x-axis, okay? So I'm going to put a dot here, and put a dot somewhere around here, right? Then I'll put a dot somewhere around here. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect, but it should align pretty closely. Okay. All right. So now we want to go through and figure out where the function is increasing or decreasing, right? So here it's going down to the right, so that means it's decreasing. So that means the derivative is going to be negative. So I'm just going to put a negative down here. Okay, just to let me know that the derivative function is going to be somewhere down here, right? It's going to be somewhere below the x-axis in this vicinity. All right. So then from here to here, the function is increasing, right? So I'm going to put a positive because the function is increasing in that interval. And then here to here, the function is also increasing, so it's also going to be positive. And then in this stretch here, the function is decreasing, right? And so it's going to be negative again. All right. So now I can kind of piece all those together. So on this stretch, the function is negative, so that means it's going to be below the x-axis, right? And then it's going to reach 0 here. All right. Then it's going to become positive, so it's going to go up, and then it has to come down to get to that next 0 point, right? But here's a little twist that's going to keep going up, right? It doesn't go through the x-axis. It actually bounces, okay, goes back up, and then it has to come back down to this second, or this third 0, I should say. And then now it goes negative, and so it's going to go below the x-axis, okay? So we'll label that as f double prime. Or excuse me, f prime, I'm sorry. All right, and so here it bounces, and notice it's not like a sharp, it's not like a V, it's more like a U. Okay, so just keep that in mind, as there's a little curve there. It's not a sharp point. All right, and then next let's do f double prime. We'll do that in green. So now we're just gonna ignore the blue. Okay, ignore f. And now we're just going to do the red. And I realized I just made a mistake earlier when I called this f prime. It's actually just f, right? So this right here is just f. Sorry about that. All right. So now for f double prime, which we're doing in green, now I want to just look at the red function here, the f prime. So now I'm going to find all the peaks and valleys here. So I have a peak here, valley here, peak here, right? So I'm going to put zeros at all those points. Now, if I'm using pencil and I don't have the different colors, I would use even though these are closed circles when they meet the x-axis, I would just put an actually open circle. That way you can see the difference between, like especially at this point, between the 0 that's actually on the graph and the 0 that our derivative will be, right? Our second derivative. And then I put a little 0 here, okay? All right. So remember, the only reason I have those open circles is so I can see the difference between those and the closed circles that I have on the x-axis before, okay, especially if I'm writing in pencil. So now I have 3 intervals: this one here, this one here, this one here, and this one here, right? Actually, yeah, and this one here, I should say, all the way. All right, so now let's see what the function is doing on either side of those those 0 points. So on this side, it's going up and to the right. So that means it's going to be positive right, between here and here. So it's going to be above the x-axis. In this interval, the function is going down to the right, so it's going to be negative. Okay. This interval is going up and to the right, so it's going to be positive. Here, it's going down again in this stretch, so it's going to be negative. Okay. So we go from positive, so I'm going to start above the x-axis, so it's going to be somewhere up here. It's going to come down here. Okay. Then it gets negative, so it's going to go down below the x-axis and then come back up to reach that 0. Okay, then it becomes positive again, so it's actually going to go up and back down, and then it's negative again, so it's going to go through that point and down. Okay, all right, and so that's the second derivative there, f double prime. All right, so make sure your labeling is clear. Now this, since these kind of coincided here, I might move that f over just so it doesn't look like it's part of the, doesn't look like it's part of the function I just drew. So I'm going to put the f prime, I'll just put it right here just because it's pretty clear that that's the only one there. All right, so that's how we do the derivatives. Now to do the bonus, I'm not going to do this here just to save time in the video, but to do the bonus, you can write higher order derivatives until you get to the nth derivative where it's 0, right? Because at some point you're going to get a horizontal line. So the next one you would evaluate just the green. So you ignore the blue, ignore the red, and you would just look at the green, and you would try to figure out, okay, where are the peaks and the valleys? And I did that backwards, right? The peaks and the valleys respectively. And then you would put those zeros on the graph and then go from there, okay? All right, and I don't know if I'll give you that bonus on the actual test, but yeah, anyway.